Hey, Sista Brunch family. I'm Fanshen Cox, your host of season 5 of Sista Brunch. We are all about sharing the stories of Black women and gender expansive people who are thriving, killing it, doing it all, and taking naps, as we'll talk about with our guest today in entertainment and media. We hope you do. Today, we are welcoming a multi-hyphenate artist from San Jose, California, Yhá Mourhia Wright. She's a graduate of the Actors Studio Drama School and the founder of Yhá Wright Productions. Can't wait to get into that. Two production company founders right here. This is going to be a good one. You can find 2 of her projects currently streaming on Amazon Prime or on Aspire TV. She's worked for Madame Noir and CBS. She's got a podcast called Inside Out Podcast, and she works with our favorite organization on the entire planet. We've got co-hosts from them this season, Black Girls Film Camp, and she is the production supervisor for Black Girls Film Camp. Welcome, Yhá Mourhia Wright.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I also, I was like, how far should I get into the episode before saying this? But I also have to say thank you because you helped my niece Jada Cox when she was in Black Girls Film Camp, and she just raved about you. And she was like, Auntie, how do you not know Yhá Mourhia? You two are exactly the same. And so, yeah, she really did. She was like, you two, you're doing the same kind of work, So I'm thrilled to have you, and I'm grateful for all the guidance and support that you gave Jada too.
Jada is, she's so sweet. And she joined us later on in the process too, and worked so hard. She turned over her screenplay in maybe 4 days. And I mean, that was her first time ever writing a screenplay. So that's not just turning it over. That's also learning formatting.
She's brilliant. She's a volleyball player. She's now on Palms. She's a filmmaker.
Is she in soccer too? I swear she had soccer.
Her brother, Solomon, was in soccer, but
maybe it was volleyball.
Volleyball.
But volleyball. But she's on her Saturdays, and then was still meeting and present, and it was amazing. And always very calm, okay. Jada's she's amazing.
It's my heart. I love you too, Solomon, but this is Sista Brunch, so we got to just talk about Jada and love up on her. All right, so Yhá Mourhia, we always love to start with our guests' journeys, and it could go, great grandparents, wherever, as far back as you want to, where you really got seeds planted to becoming the founder that you are, the filmmaker, the multi-hyphenate artist.
Well, on one day, on October 3rd, 1987, Yhá Mourhia Wright was born. That's the truth. But no, my parents are from Gary, Indiana. And so, and my dad was in the Navy. And the way that my parents ended up moving out here is that they moved him to Moffett Field, stationed him at Moffett Field in Mountain View. And back in 84. So my brother had just been born. And so I was born in the Bay Area in California at Stanford Hospital. I thought it was a sign that I was supposed to go to Stanford. It was not, but I was in the Color Purple musical at Stanford. So, I mean,
that was how you were supposed to be there. I guess that was it.
But I mean, I had imaginary friends. I talk about it all the time. I think every interview I've kind of slided in there because it really is so much the fabric of my storytelling. My imaginary friends were Shauna, Rana, and Malika. Sometimes Shauna Rana was one person. Malika was always her own person, but Shauna Rana could fragment into 2 or sometimes be 1. So 2 imaginary friends.
I love it.
And I loved my baby dolls, and I loved watching TV and cartoons, and I loved Home Alone. I loved storytelling. I loved writing very much so. I was just telling a friend the other day, I was like, I really live in my head, and that has a bad rap, but I mean, that's how I'm creating stories, and that's also how I create the realities that I want, being like, ooh, I'm going to make a series, and then making it, ooh, it needs a place to live, and then putting it on Prime. But I always wrote stories, or at least imagined them and created worlds. And when I was 6 years old, or just about 6, my sister was born, and I always wanted a little sister. And I was writing stories. I was writing skits for church plays. I got my first laptop, which I didn't realize how fortunate I was, but I got my first laptop in maybe 6th grade. I was a part of this program sponsored by Intel. and it was Carver Scholars. It eventually was changed to Green Scholars, but it was for Black high achieving students throughout the Bay Area, but particularly South Bay, the Silicon Valley. No matter what schools you went to, we all had these Saturday sessions, these tech sessions. They were doing things that we see nowadays back very early on. Yeah. Deborah Watkins is the founder. And so I had a laptop and I was writing stories and novels. During the holidays, we would go visit our family, our relatives in Gary, Indiana. And at that time in the mid 90s, Gary was like the crime capital of the world. It was like probably like competing with Detroit or maybe New Orleans. But at one point it was like number one or number two. I remember back in 1998-ish when we were there, and I would go downstairs to my grandparents' basement and I would just write my novels on their computer, and I would print it, and I would use Microsoft Paint to design the cover of them. And I was doing all of this, and that's where I would go. Everybody would be playing, the kids would be playing, but I would just go write. And so it started really early on. Yeah.
And you're also a published author. I didn't mention that in your bio. So
I am.
Because that's, you're talking about kind of having the laptop and writing, and also the imaginary friends. So the creative then filtered into you actually writing, because some folks have imaginary friends and then they don't do anything with that. But you became a filmmaker, you became a writer, and you also learned production, which I think a lot of people who see themselves as writers primarily kind of then have to wait for a producer to come along and a director to come along to actually get things moving. But you do all of that as well. How did you start to learn about production?
So I have to credit, in high school, I was in student body government. So that was production. We were putting on rallies. I still get nostalgic butterflies when I think about our homecoming float competition. And so we would build the float. We would use chicken wire, and we had these float competitions between the classes, and we would ride on the float. And if you didn't get to ride on the float, you'd be mad. And I think you'd be staying up late at night. We would also have choreographed dances for the homecoming rally. Like, I was already very much so in that world. And then when I went into undergrad at Santa Clara University, I was actually a poli-sci major planning to go to law school, but like not taking any of the government classes. I was like, oh, I can finally take those theater courses, because my parents couldn't afford local children's theater, was expensive. So at Santa Clara, I would start taking theater courses, and then we had an annual Black Student Union MLK night. We would have the performances and it'd be on the main stage theater. And so it used to just kind of be, skits. And then here comes Yhá Mourhia coming along, and we were filling seats and inviting people. We took it to a school in EPA in East Palo Alto, and we took the performance and adapted it to their stage and had a whole tech rehearsal there. And then by 2009, I had written the play, pulled the costume pieces from our costume department in college. I just knew that I wanted to make things happen. And on top of that, for our multicultural center, I was an event planner. In 2008, I planned our awards, and I took it to a new level. It used to just kind of be like a dinner kind of chill thing, but I had color palette, and I just love doing this stuff, honestly, again, living in my head. And I was just like, oh, can anybody make it happen? You can? Okay, let's do it. It's like a very interesting childlike naivete that I still have intact somewhere in the center of me, that like I just say, okay, let's do it.
I love that. And I think, it's interesting. We're kind of intergenerational here at Sista Brunch. And even when I ask that question, the journey question, I tend to kind of be like, well, so how did you learn how to produce formally? And your initial answer is so perfect. And I love it that folks who are younger than me are like, well, I was doing event planning. I was doing the floats at my school, like that. And that is producing. And it's so beautiful that you all understand that you are building those skills in all these other ways. If Hollywood tells you, oh, they need to see this on your resume, or, or filmmaking programs, et cetera, it's so wrong, because it's about leadership skills. It's about people skills. You were also in BSU. So it's also about identities and like being aware of the kinds of stories that we want to focus on. Those of us who are a little bit older probably try to focus on more traditional means of becoming a producer. And I love how kind of freewheeling you all are, in the sense of like, this is, these are all these different things I do, and therefore I can make 3, 4, 5 short films. Speaking of which, I got to see yours at the Michaud Film Festival, which I love that synergy too, which is, we were introduced by Jada. Then, you were on our list of people to speak to at Michaud. Then the strike happened and we had to put it off. So I want to take Don't Be Desperate as kind of a case study for our listeners, because you've done something that's really hard to do, which is you got distribution for your film. So will you take us like the short version of how you went from seedling of the idea all the way to getting it onto Aspire TV?
Yeah, so Don't Be Desperate this is the first time I've ever called it this. It's like one of the most obnoxious projects I've had. And here's the reason why. It was kind of obnoxious of me, like a little bit like, it's a little obnoxious, but it worked. So back in May 2021, a colleague of mine she's an actress, and was like, hey, I need my reel to be updated. And so she commissioned me to write a few short scenes, like 5 minutes or less, 5 pages or less, for her reel. So I ended up writing 3 different short films. And then I got this wise idea from these projects, like, oh, we should film 3 different short films in 3 different cities. And we'll be a collective of women doing this, right? And of that, one of those projects, the seedling of it, was Don't Be Desperate, which was maybe always called Don't Be Desperate. I don't think it was, though. But in any case, it was just the date scene in Don't Be Desperate. And I can provide you with clips too, if you want to intertwine that into the podcast. But it was the date.
I love you producing. Look, you came on and produced my podcast for me. I love it.
Just let me know what scenes you need.
We will.
But yeah, it was the date scene only. And she wakes up and she's like, Jen, I had this crazy dream, and it's kind of just that. And then I sent it to a couple of people. One of them is Letitia Guillory, who is a phenomenal writer. And also at that time, she was a board member of the Black TV and Film Collective. And I was head of staff programs director at BTFC at the time. And then I sent it to Shannon, who is, people know her as Professional Pen, the Shannon Johnson of Professional Pen, who I've been utilizing as my script consultant for many years now, probably like 6 years now. And Shannon gave me notes. She was like, this needs development. And Letitia gave me notes. And she was just like, oh, well, you have a musical element in there because she's a Broadway hopeful. Why don't you like add music? I think she and Shannon both kind of said that. I was like, okay, I'll come to New York. You know what? 5 minutes. Let's make it a little longer. Let's just make a film. And they're like, wait, how are we going to get the funding? I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. We'll get it. I know people. We'll just, me and my crew will come together. We'll start, having pre-production meetings, and we'll cast, and we'll just like kind of pay people, we'll find it. It'll work out. No money for this. No money for this. Like, we'll do it. And so anyways, yeah, we ended up filming Don't Be Desperate in summer of 2021. And then Hurricane, who was she? I forget her name right now. She came in 2021 and in the tri-state area and shut down the production. Mm-hmm. It was the last day. It was like the final hour, and we had to then push production to mid-October. And we had 2 more days of production in mid-October. So it took 5 days for that film. Mind you, I also at the time was back and forth between New York and the Bay Area, resetting my life in the Bay Area after August 2020. So, and 3 weeks later, booked a flight back to New York, ended up staying there for like about 4 weeks. In any case, in that time, we finished Don't Be Desperate. One thing I'll let people know, folks who are like, oh, I shot the film and I have to, maybe they don't have finishing funds, or which you should always keep that in your budget, but maybe they don't, or they don't have enough finishing funds. Don't think just because you complete the project that you have to release it the next year. That was a mistake, a lesson learned from Don't Be Desperate. Funny thing is, Love My Roomie took me 6 years, and it took me a long time for Love My Roomie to get in front of people. And I think I was being reactive because I didn't want to wait that long again. I wanted to keep going because Love My Roomie took me so long. And
we should mention Love My Roomie is the one you can see on Amazon Prime.
Yes, right? Love My Roomie you can see on Amazon Prime, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it took me so long that I ended up with Don't Be Desperate pushing right through post, and it took us 6 months, and I was submitting it to festivals and not getting in because the project wasn't just like skeletal. I also didn't have the sound where it needed to be. It has singing. There's like very specific things that needed to happen in post sound. It costs a lot of money in post sound to get even where it is now. And fun fact, even before my show, I had to give it another sound pass through a sound engineer because I was getting quality flags through the DCP. But now, because of that, the quality of sound is, I think, as sharp as we're going to get it, because Tristan, who worked on the sound, is phenomenal. Hey, everyone. I'm Yhá Mourhia Wright, and you're listening to the Sista Brunch podcast.
Hey family, it's Fanshen and you're listening to Sista Brunch. You can watch video clips of all of our guests by following and interacting with us on Instagram at Sista Brunch Podcast. Did you know that you now can become an essential part of the Sista Brunch community? You're already doing so much for us. We appreciate your reviews. We appreciate your likes and follows on social media, but you can also join our Patreon community to unlock some community events together, and most importantly, be a driving force behind the magic of Sista Brunch. Check out patreon.com/sistabrunch to learn how you can support us in continuing to bring you the stories of Black women and gender expansive people thriving in entertainment and media. Thank you so much. Ready for more? Let's dive right back in with our guest, Yhá Mourhia Wright. Like you said, in a way, you just said don't feel like you need to rush to get your film made, but you did this with Don't Be Desperate. Like you shot it, you cut it, and then you got distribution within a pretty short. Okay.
Sorry. So let me clarify. I'm glad you said that, because I think in these interviews and panels in general, for the sake of summarizing and being on to the next thing, we forget and people don't have full context. So it was 2021 we filmed it, right? 2022 took 6 months of post-production, really like 8, because it has an original score. It's very long. It technically is like 40 minutes. That's a short film. It is technically an extended short film, still qualifies, but it's like, and it got cut down to 27, and then another cut that's 18 minutes. In any case, there was that. We shot a lot. We got a lot of coverage. There's a lot of scenes. So there's all these things. It took a long time in post-production. Also, my crew, I wasn't able to pay them to do it full time. So it's like they had to do it here and there. They got paid, but like, come on. So we didn't get into my show 2022. And what changed? Well, the project was just a little bit removed from finished, but I think it was way too long. I submitted late, like on the deadline, and it's a longer project. So for that, my advice is to submit as early as possible. And I think I just had a lot of things that weren't working for me, including the project not being as strong as it could be. So anyways, continue to go to the drawing board. And then, when I applied again, they tell you not to do that for projects, by the way, unless your project is like very different. And I did it again. I was just like, hey, no, I submitted this last year. But the team and we went, I wrote this in my cover letter. We went to the drawing board. We did it, and here I am again. Nice. I'm proud of what this is. And I hope you'll like it too. And we got nominated for Outstanding Score.
Yes, you sure did. Yes. And we chose a great festival.
It's a great festival. They're amazing. So Aspire TV reached out to Black TV and Film Collective. At that time, I was the programs director. And they were like, hey, we're programming our 6th season of our Urban Indie Film Block. Can you submit films? We had 80 submissions within like 2 weeks. And Kellyanne, who was the outreach community coordinator, myself, with the help of Okima Timor and Laura Fielder, we went through all of those projects. We didn't for ourselves, obviously conflict of interest, so other people rated it. And we submitted over 40 films, and 32 films got selected from Black TV and Film Collective. And Love My Roomie didn't get selected, by the way. Fun fact, if people are like, oh, no, Love My Roomie didn't get selected. They were like, sorry, sis, it's a long project. We only have a 44-minute block max, and you have 50 million different episodes. It's not working. But Don't Be Desperate got it. That's what this permission do.
Yes.
So I want people
Yes.
to know, like, it's not like, one project did well and another project didn't, and not everything is going to be doing well at the same time or getting what you want at the same time. So,
Which I think speaks to exactly what you do is do a lot
yeah.
and put them out there. I think also sometimes we get stuck in, I got to make it perfect. I got to
Mm-hmm.
make it just right. And you also gave us the example of not getting into a festival you wanted to get
Mm-hmm.
into. And instead of just submitting the same thing again, which so true, programmers do not want to see that, but you went back, you reworked it, and then you got
Mm-hmm.
back in. And I think that's so valuable. Let's talk about your new podcast and also talk about Yhá Wright Productions. I'm assuming those two are connected. So share about both.
Yeah, so Inside Out podcast started in 2020. I was 2 days back in the Bay after my family urgently being like, come back, there's a pandemic. And so I was laying on my bed in my childhood room, and I'm like, okay, watching TV, like watching a pandemic unfold. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And I was deep in pre-production for another project called It Stays Here, which is
Of course
probably
you were.
one of
Of course you were.
which is probably one of my strongest stories and scripts to date for
Ooh.
short film. It's really good. It's actually the Love My Roomie prequel, but production got shut down. I couldn't do it. And I was like, well, I had an idea about the podcast, and I was going through heartbreak at the time. I was going through a lot all at once. And I was like, I guess the podcast makes sense. And that's how I came to Inside Out podcast as I was going through my own spiritual journey. And it ended up being very healing for myself and others. And then fast forward to spring 2021, where am I now? I'm in Don't Be Desperate land. So the podcast started falling to the wayside. And here we are on the other side of Don't Be Desperate land. I'm like, oh yeah, that podcast I ditched for Don't Be Desperate.
What can we hear on Inside Out? What do you focus on?
Inside Out is all about humanizing the brand is what is my tagline for it. And
Oh, nice.
it's about really diving into who we are. Like, there's Yhá Mourhia, the brand on Instagram and my story, but it's like, what makes you tick? What are your trials and tribulations? Like those nuances that I think are missing from a lot of, unless somebody's brand is to keep it real, you don't really see that on social media. You see a lot of wins. And I think that in this age where we are now realizing how much already we're reliant on AI, but also how much of a threat AI is, I think it's really important for us to continue to connect the humanity dots with what we see of each other on social media. So it's really about that. It's entrepreneurs, thought leaders. There's my Midwest entrepreneurs. I get country sometimes. My thought leaders. I know it comes in. But yeah, so I'm excited. Previously, it was just audio only, and they were just starting to put any platform where you can, virtually record face to face, and they were all in beta back in 2020 that I knew of. So it's all in person, filming it in a studio in Burbank, and then
beautiful.
I have a new
Nice.
I have a new studio that I'll also do some remote filming in Atlanta, and then I'll be doing it virtually as well. So I'll be kind of different places, but I'm excited.
All right. I got to ask each season. Sometimes we alternate with this question. Some guests we don't, some guests we ask, but you've talked about a lot of things that cost money to do. So I'm going to ask.
Please ask the question.
And really the question is around, and this is especially when we have executives, like kind of people who don't necessarily do more freelance jobs, but you've got a production company. How do you fundraise? Where do you get the money from?
That's a great question. So I'll give you my quick since 2018 hustle story. So jobs only, focus on work. So I had full-time jobs. And then when it came to going back to the drawing board for Love My Roomie in 2019, I was a senior video producer at Madame Noir. So I had a full-time salary benefit job. And then what a lot of people don't know is on the weekends, I was not outside in New York. I was working part-time at Playwrights Horizons. I was working there in the box office. So, I would have people talking to me while on the phone, whatever. I'm a whole senior video producer. I could be like, I met Fantasia. I met Loretta Devine. She pointed out that my heel was broken. I knew it was. And I was hoping she didn't notice.
She spoke to you?
Sweet. Yeah, I had to welcome
say
her.
anything.
She was like, baby, your heel. And I was like, oh.
She said it.
Well, anyway, I
You
digress.
channeled her. I
Well,
love that. I love
but
that. So
yeah,
here
I was
you were with like all of these big names and
meeting, and
doing
then
that
on
kind of.
Saturdays and
So, oh,
Sundays, I was
okay.
humble, making maybe an
Uh,
extra 15, 18 an hour, working at a box office for anywhere to 5 to 8 hours. And there was a point at the end of October of 2019 where I had worked 35 days in a row. And I do mean a row.
no.
And
And
that is
we
how
talked about this.
we
We
did talk about this.
talked
And no,
about
I
this
ended up
before
in
we came.
therapy. I ended up in
Okay,
therapy. I'm
good.
being honest.
Good.
But
Good.
this is
Please.
how.
That's what Inside Out is about.
Right.
Yes. We
But
we got a little taste of it. Yeah.
yeah, but I did fundraise for my projects, but ultimately my strength was never crowdfunding, and so I didn't get all. I got good amount of donations and people who would donate regularly to my company's a nonprofit and sponsored under a Fractured Atlas. So they would donate regularly, and that was very helpful. But the bigger cost, it would be me working my 9 to 5. Right now, like I have a full time job, so I do that, and then I have my part time freelance jobs, and that's how I'm able to do what I do. That's just my truth. I'm working
Yeah.
on though the next year though. This
Mhm.
next year, what I am working on is now sponsorships and grants. So I'm pivoting, but I've been such a doer that I often felt like if I waited for the money to come, I didn't know when I was going to be able to make my project.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there was just a lot of sacrifice in order to make them. And I've just reached a point now where I'm like, okay, I have enough under my belt, even access to people who can help me with my grants, that I can get this money without literally not eating, which is like at the bottom of my journey what I was doing. Like
And not working 35 days in a
that
row. We got
that
to
as
stop
well.
doing that too. Wow. I just have to say that we should all get our work out there all the time. I'm a firm believer in that. It's, you don't wait till it's perfect to get it
Mhm.
out there. At the same time, there are standards, right? And they don't have to be European standards, thank God. Like those are not our standards. We have our own, but
Mhm.
we got to be able to see you. You should make some nice looking pictures, right? It should
Mhm.
look nice, and we got to be able to hear you. Like all those things that are important when you
Mhm.
are in this medium. And I have to just tell you that your work is beautiful,
Thank
and
you.
knowing knowing how much or how little resources, how few
Mhm.
resources you had to do those, I just want to say congratulations, and that
Thank
you're an
you.
amazing role model for still doing really high quality content. So this is our signature Sister Brunch question, which is that you and young Yhá Mourhia, you can choose what
Mhm.
age she is.
Oh,
The
okay.
two of you are sitting down for a Sister Brunch. Sister Brunch came out of the DGA trainee program. So the
Mm.
women of color mentors would take their trainees out to a brunch on the weekends to be able to really talk about what they were experiencing. They started to do just like gatherings of Black women and women of color. And I was like, all of these women have these incredible stories. Let's make a
Mhm.
podcast out of it. So that's why the brunch theme. And so if you were having a brunch, you were the mentor for your younger self. What are you both eating? What are you both drinking?
Okay.
And what do you tell her?
We're eating breakfast tacos because it's brunch.
Love it. And you're from San Jose. You're from
Yes.
California. Like
Yes.
that's such a California thing. And yes.
Absolutely. I don't
Yeah.
honestly think there's a week in my life that I don't eat tacos. So definitely breakfast tacos. Pretty sure I'm
Wait a
always
minute.
eating
So now
tacos.
I got to ask, where's your favorite place to get tacos out here?
So I'm still navigating the LA taco scene, but there's a taco truck. What's his name? I forget his name. He's right across the street from me, and there's the best tacos. Vidya tacos too. It's the best tacos.
Nice. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So you're both having tacos. What are you
So we're
drinking?
eating breakfast tacos. We're probably drinking. I'm gonna say we're drinking apple juice because Young Moria is not having mimosas. So we're drinking some apple juice.
And you're being a good role model for her. You're not
Yes.
gonna have a mimosa in front of her. I love it. I
No, I
love
don't
it.
want her to be curious about mimosas that early.
Nope. Nope. And what do you tell her?
What do I tell her? I tell her that it's okay to take your time. Yeah, I tell her it's okay to take your time and that you're not racing against anyone else. But she doesn't really think that, but you're not racing against yourself. You have nothing to prove. take your time and just enjoy it. Allow yourself to enjoy it being life. I would tell her that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Yhá Mourhia, for coming on Sista Brunch. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. I've been enjoying myself. This has been great.
Good. Thank you, Sista Brunch family, for showing up to be part of today's Sista Brunch with Yhá Mourhia Wright. We are so grateful for your energy, engagement, and your love. Thank you for sharing your reviews, telling your people about us, and engaging with us on our Instagram at Sista Brunch Podcast. We're on TikTok under our production company's TikTok profile at Trujulo Media, Trujulo. You can read the transcript of every episode and find show notes on our website at sistabrunch.com. If you prefer video and you want to see our guests' lovely faces, we also put the full video interviews up on the Trujulo YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/Trujulo Media, Trujulo Media. We so appreciate your support by subscribing to our podcast, leaving us a great review, and sharing it with your friends, family, colleagues, community, anybody with an interest in working in film and TV, whether they already do, they want to, or if they're even just curious of what it's like. Join us. Season 5 of Sista Brunch is brought to you by Trujulo Productions. Our co-creators are Fanshen Cox, that's me, Anya Adams, Christabel and Sia Boadi, and Brittany Turner. Sista Brunch is a Women Make Movies production assistance program project. We acknowledge that the land we record our podcast on is the original land of the Tongva and the Chumash people. We cannot wait to see you next time. Take care, everybody.